Hey everybody, welcome to Black Lotus Live, where we talk about all things strange and unusual. And tonight we have with us Wes G. Roberts, who is an alien abductee and experiencer. And but before we get into all that, I need to make an announcement to everybody. Starting this Thursday, we are going to begin the show at an hour later, so 9 p.m. Eastern time, as opposed to 8 p.m. So just want to make that announcement because it'll happen from then on. So, but let me read some background on Wes for you. He's a 30-year contract college professor and had hints of alien visitations back to his teens. Through off times, frustrating nightmare experiences. Then because of the consciously recalled experience in the 1980s, Wes eventually became convinced his experiences could not be explained away by conventional theories. After 20 years, he decided to seek professional advice for a consciously recalled experience he had in the 80s. And now he helps other people who are experiencers. And you can find all of his information, including his books, at his website. And that's wesgroberts.com. And I have a link to that dropped in the description. Wes, it's great to have you here. And as I mentioned to you before, I'm also an abductee. And so I was very excited to have you on the show with us.
Oh, thank you
Welcome.
So much. Thank you. Thank you very much. I'm really happy to be here. This is what I love doing.
Yeah. So can you explain to us about your experience that you had back in the 80s?
Yeah, I would be happy to. I was living with another partner at the time. This is how life goes, I guess, for some of us. And just a normal night of going to sleep. But the experience I had overnight, whatever transitioned overnight, was not normal. And in fact, when I woke up, I was sitting bolt upright, very awake at around 5 a.m. the next morning, and just watching the digital clock. The minutes were going by like seconds. I don't know how to explain what I was going through. I felt out of phase, out of sync. So I knew something really extraordinary had happened, and I recalled everything. So I scooted to the second bedroom and just grabbed some scrap paper and wrote it all down. And that was it. I didn't know what it was. I did not know what it was. And I just revisited this experience countless times for over 20 years, thinking, I wish I could go back to where I was. It wasn't extraordinary. It was just it seemed just like a condo or just like an apartment. I wish I could go back and take a closer look at what was there. And so I knew it wasn't a dream. That was all, because it It wasn't fluidic. You know how dreams, you can look at yourself in the mirror and you'll be 10 different people in a few seconds? This kind of thing. So I knew it wasn't a dream. Things stayed really stable and cohesive. When I reached my destination, which I can certainly talk about, was this kind of condo, things were really stable. Things stayed in the same place. There was even an old black rotary dial phone on the counter. And I suspect I know why it was put there instead of a newer phone, let's say. And there was literally a little black book beside the phone. And then the rest of the place was just pristine, as if no one had ever lived there, as if it was mine. And there were photo albums and photos and artifacts, and I was allowed to pretty much freely go back and forth in this place several times until I finally thought there's something wrong with this. And I finally felt there was somebody with me, although I could never see them. And around that point, and this has happened to me a number of times, when I thought something was wrong and I started to become aware that there was something unusual happening, I was kind of whisked out of the place. The experience was over as far as they were concerned.
Why do you think that is?
I'd like to think, and I could be totally wrong, I'd like to think it was because I started to guess or to gather that I was being manipulated. That this was at something else's hands. And a half a dozen times, I have to tell you, I've become aware of the experience, like something was up, and it's been terminated every time.
Like a test? Do you think you're being tested for something or just experimented on?
I think, Terry, that I have been, and to an extent continue to be, observed. And I think it's been my experience, and I have to say all my experiences are not terrible. This one was a little scary, but most of them are not. Most of them have been quite positive and uplifting and have changed my life, actually, in some ways. But I think I'm being observed particularly, pardon me, in emotionally stressful times.
Okay.
It's been my thought that they want to observe me under emotional duress.
See how you handle it or something?
How I handle it, how I feel. I'm not 100% convinced all alien species feel or experience things the way we do.
Right.
I'm only connected, I think, to 2 or 3, but I'm not convinced they get it. I'm not convinced they get our motivations. I'm not convinced they understand why somebody reacts with fear or horror or joy or anything. And I've always thought like a specimen when I've been in these experiences.
That's exactly how I feel. In my experience, well, actually, let me say you're very lucky to have a good experience like that, because I almost certainly did not. But that's what I got from them, is that they were cold and emotionless. But I eventually came to terms with it, because I started thinking about it as though, if our scientists have lab rats and they're experimenting on them, they don't care what the rat feels. They're not concerned about that. They're only concerned about the results. And so I started thinking about it like that, in those terms. And so that's the way I was able to, like I said, to come to terms with this whole thing, because in your case, you consciously remembered this. In my case, what happened to me happened back in 1988, and I didn't remember any of it until 1995. And at first, I had it was a very positive memory, actually, But there was a point where I was on a table, and one of the alien beings came up to me and put her hand on my forehead, and I blacked out. And for years, I couldn't remember what had happened during that time, because the next thing I know we're up and walking around the ship. And then a couple of years ago, Terry and Ralph and I were watching a movie called The Fourth Kind.
Oh,
And
yeah.
in that, something else, right? And in that movie, a woman is recalling her experience, and there's a drill coming directly toward her eye. So, it's coming right at the screen. And I flipped out, and it triggered the memory that I could never remember. And the memory was what happened to me on that table. And ever since then, I've been waking up at nighttime just screaming, with the memory of this thing. And so, but like I said, I've come to terms knowing that they do what they do, and they're cold and emotionless because our scientists would be as well.
I have to tell you how much of this resonates with me, Damien, not because I've been through what you were through. Interestingly, though, I've had a lot of experiences where they're poking around in my eyes. So I don't know why that is. I felt physical sensations when it happened. I do not know if it was a physical experience. But what you're saying resonates because there was a time before I integrated this that I was afraid to go to sleep. I don't mind telling people that. There was a time when the moment I thought I was falling asleep, I thought they're coming to get me.
Mm-hmm.
And this just went on and on. And I was married at the time, and my ex was tolerant, not disbelieving, not necessarily believing, but tolerant. She was supportive. But one night she walked in, and I wasn't asleep. I jumped out of bed and asked her who she was. I mean, I was just not rational. I was just losing it. And eventually, and I still have sleep problems. I'm an insomniac at this point, and I think they started with this. And I'll still have an occasional night when I'll be, I'm just not comfortable going to sleep. And
Right.
I'll sleep with the light on. And probably your viewers are going, oh, the big boy sleeps with the light on. I don't know what to say, except that it's true.
No shame. There's no shame in that, I don't think.
Oh, well, thank you for saying that, because I know other people like me, and I know a lot of people who cannot relate to this at all. And if I tell them my mildest experiences, most of which are positive, they'll run the other way. They absolutely do not want to hear it.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that's common. I don't know.
No, I've experienced the same thing as well. Yeah, like I have to be very careful when I talk about the paranormal, because if someone backs away early, sometimes I could sense why. They don't tell me why, but I could sense that it would cause them distress to talk about the subject, and so I don't talk about it anymore.
Yeah, I think it is very common for abductees to go through these kind of things. With the insomnia, I know I do. Another commonality is that they can't be under open sky, and they're always thinking that people or somebody is watching them, and so, it's easy to start thinking you're going crazy, but they're not,
Oh, sorry, go ahead, please.
Oh, no, go on.
I was going to say, I guess some of the stuff I had read before I ever thought I was this kind of person, and I denied it for 20 years. But some of the stuff was helpful, like the stuff John Mack did. And the stuff Bud Hopkins did, and other rational scientific minds. So when I came to believe this was me too, I was a little more grounded, probably a little more ready to deal with it.
You have quoted Sir Arthur Conan Doyle's axiom, when you have eliminated the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be the truth. And I can't agree with that more. And that's actually how I came to the realization that this thing actually happened to me. Because for years after the memory, I thought, I just hallucinated the whole thing and this and that. And then I started looking into other people's cases and how similar they were to mine. And I thought, no, not crazy. I didn't hallucinate this thing. It wasn't some sort of delusion. It really happened. And so,
Mhm.
yeah.
Wes, I wanted to say that your story that you told in the beginning, it was incredibly exciting to me because if I mean, I just started processing that story a few minutes ago, but if I'm correct, I think it strongly suggests that one of my scientific hypotheses is correct. Your experience, corroborates it. So, but my hypothesis is it's a possible explanation for missing time, which people experience. When they see UFOs, even back in folklore, if you were to spend time close to a fairy or a group of fairies, you would experience missing time. Once again, what missing time is basically you believe you've spent, let's say, 10 minutes in a place or doing a task, but then in reality, you've spent much longer. So it's called missing time. Okay. So that's what I think you experience, and that's what my hypothesis tries to describe. So what one of my explanations is that whatever these paranormal things are, whether they be fairies or extraterrestrials, they in order to do some of the things they do, which is like, let's say they phase through matter, they're invisible, all these crazy things, it requires a lot of energy. And I believe that energy is given off by the UFO or by the animal itself. That part's not really important, but I believe they're using a lot of energy. And a consequence of that energy is they create time dilation, which is when space and time is warped. That's how you get time dilation. And time dilation is a real scientific concept that has been shown to be real. And basically, it's the same thing as missing time. If you're going extremely fast, close to the speed of light, or if you're near a large energy field or a large amount of gravity, then space and time is being manipulated, and you're missing time. Okay, so how does that? So what I think is happening is that when people have missing time, it's because they're close to that craft, and it might be an unintended side effect. Or sometimes, like if you're just driving, I hypothesize that if you're just driving and you experience missing time, perhaps there was a UFO above you at the time or something, and it was cloaked or something, and then you just get caught up in the web. Okay, but that sounds like, but then here's the part of the story that you say that's interesting to me. You said you were laying in this bed and you were looking at a clock and the minutes were ticking down like seconds.
Yeah.
So that's a very data rich statement. So what I'm analyzing from here, I could be wrong. I think about it more, but it sounds like you were experiencing time dilation, and it sounds like it was very targeted, the area too, because it sounds like, I'm guessing this clock was only a few feet away from you. It wasn't like very far away from you. So it seems like you were probably close to a UFO, extraterrestrial, whatever's messing with you that's paranormal, and it was either purposefully or not on purposely close enough to you that it was warping space and time, and then that the clock was far enough away that it was not being interfered by the time dilation. And then the other thing is how fast does this time dilation work, or what are the times of it? Well, you explain it. I know it's just an estimate, but you say that each second appeared to be each minute appeared to be a second.
Yeah.
So that sounds like it was going 60 times faster, or you were experiencing time 60 times faster than everybody. I know that's just an estimate. So that would mean that, let's say if it's 60 times more, I'm really bad at math right now, but let's say you spend a minute in this state, if for everybody else it would be an hour. So that kind of works out pretty good, actually. Yeah. So anyway, I just thought about this. I'm still processing the idea, but it sounds like you're describing what I've described as far as time dilation and missing time. And it just happens to be lucky that you saw that clock. Now, was that clock yours, or was that in an area that was not yours?
Yeah, it was on the bedroom table, maybe 5 feet away.
Your bedroom table, correct?
Yep.
Okay. All right. Well, yeah, I just want to say that, man. That's crazy. That's a very cool observation, though.
Was
Thank
anybody
you for
else in the
fleshing
room
that
with
out.
you? I'm sorry. Was there anybody else in the room with you at the time?
Yeah, sleeping beside me.
So she had no idea what was going on.
Yes and no, and I appreciate everything I'm hearing here because it's helping me sort of replay and come up with new ideas. Definitely altered state for sure. Definitely energy manipulation, which is what they're pretty good at. But my partner at the time was asleep, and so we didn't really talk about it. I said, I think something odd happened last night. We didn't really talk about it. And then it was later, years later, after we had gone our separate ways and everything, that she told me there were actually 2 such events.
Hmm.
In both of them, she was catatonic. She was shut off. Pretty
That's
much
generally
shut
the
off.
case.
You said there was 2 events, so she noticed one of the events?
She noticed both of the events. I was unaware of the second one, Ralph. I was unaware of it until many, many years later. She told me. She went to say, "Oh yeah, I remember this thing in the 1980s," and she's telling me the story, Ralph, and it's not the same one. It's different. It was distinct. And I thought, what the heck? Because I was totally unaware of it. And I tried to visit it under hypnosis and could get diddly, nothing. But both times she was rendered inactive. She could hear, and that is all.
Interesting.
Did you ever see any beings in your experiences, or was it just the experiences around you that were odd?
That's such a good question, because I keep thinking to myself, I'm the only one that doesn't get to see these beings. I keep thinking I'm the only one. I have once or twice only. And then there's one that's been connected with me my whole life. I refer to her as my twin. She's either a tall white or Palladian, I'm not sure. Her I've seen in many different forms. Sometimes in a dream, sometimes in a vision, sometimes under hypnosis. But the others, I just call them the brown skinned people, the helpers. And I didn't know that others have seen these ones. I had not realized that until later.
And can you describe how tall are they? What's their general body shape? Is it humanoid? What are their facial features like? Any hair, clothing?
So the one I refer to as my twin, or tall white, inevitably she's 7 or 8 feet tall and pretty straight up and down. So I would say no discernible figure. You wouldn't know a gender if it wasn't that I felt the being was a female. And she's appeared to me as an average person in her normal form, which would be, pretty hairless, large eyes, not frightening, but intimidating. And she's also just appeared as just a tall person. And her possibly mate appeared to a friend of mine in Australia who got in touch with me and said, "This figure just appeared in my kitchen." I mean, literally.
Wow.
So I don't get that, right? This does not happen to me. But the other ones, the brown skinned people, are uniformly maybe 5 feet tall, generally shirtless or without clothes at all. Their skin appears not to be finished to me, like it was a work in progress.
Really? Can you go into detail? What does that mean? Does it mean like it's missing it's missing components, the color's off or something? Or
the color's uniformly brown. They appear to have places for eyes and a nose and a mouth, but they appear to be generally, all I can say is like unfinished, like somebody took a sandblaster to them, quite honestly. And that their face was never finished.
I got you. Interesting.
Not pleasant.
Just like unpleasant to look at, basically. Not, or is their demeanor unpleasant as well? Their actions.
They tend to. I've noticed these ones a few times. They tend to keep just out of sight, which is annoying to no end to me. I generally don't get to see them. I've seen them once or twice, and they're just like, I don't know how to describe it. Just plain vanilla, unfinished beings that are required to carry out tasks. They're not on autopilot, but neither do they make themselves known. For instance, near the end of my 80s experience, I had one on each side of me, escorting me across what seemed to be a tarmac. I wasn't alone. There was maybe another 50 people who were likewise being escorted across the tarmac. And these brown beings were on each side of us. So I can never turn to face them directly, engage them. I don't know if it's not allowed. I really don't understand why. But these are like helper beings. They do stuff for others. That's my thinking.
So you've had experiences quite often then?
So I've had, Ralph, a lot of consciously recall experiences, which is why I went to see a hypnotherapist. That did take me 20 years, as I think I mentioned. It's like, okay, I'm going to take my time with this and pretend that that's not who I am. So when I eventually got there, I had a collection of consciously recalled experiences, but I really wanted to dig into the 1980s experience. I really wanted to know about that. So you can imagine that opened up a can of worms once memories began to be recalled that I was unaware of, combined with my own memories. I'm going to say easily 50, 60 different incidents.
Wow.
Probably.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
I had another question. So first of all, is it correct? Did you refer to them as extraterrestrials?
I do.
Okay, and then secondly, what makes you believe they're extraterrestrials in origin?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's one I've had before. I can think of no other way to explain them away, quite honestly. I'm just trying the process of deduction.
Okay.
I'm thinking, is it possible they're ultra terrestrials? Is it possible they're from other dimensions? I'd say yes and yes. I don't have answers to that, but they seem to fit in terms of their powers and abilities. They seem to fit a mold. They seem to fit a pattern that I've read about before, that others I know have talked about. They have abilities that we do not have, and they seem to be able to interfere in a person's life at any time they wish. This is not like any other creature I know, but then I don't know all creatures. It could be fairy folk. I don't know.
Interesting.
Good question, though. Thank you.
Another question is, how much do you think they're trying to deceive you? Either in their appearance, like let's say they're wearing an outfit, they don't actually look like that, in what they tell you, in their actions, in their staging. How much deception do you perceive is happening?
If I were to say I perceive deception for my benefit, would that make sense?
Yeah, of course. Yes, of course. It's like telling a kid that his dog went to a ranch to live out instead of dying. It's a lie to comfort.
So my friend Leslie, who's my hypnotherapist and a good friend, we've talked about this a lot. So when I was younger, they certainly tried to appear as people.
Oh.
They appeared as people. They appeared as doctors sometimes. The white jacket, the whole 9 yards. Yeah. They tried not to scare me. That's my opinion and my friend's opinion as well. They tried to appear in a form or in a shape or in a way that would not frighten me, but perhaps reassure me. So I call that deception, probably for my benefit.
Shape-shifting deception specifically as well.
Yeah. I mean, I had an incident where I was on an examination table in what I took to be a clinic.
Okay.
And there was a very tall doctor, unusually tall. It's like, okay, I didn't question that. At the time, physically, I had pneumonia. Okay. And I used to get pneumonia all the time. I don't anymore. But at the time, I had pneumonia, and this doctor was waving a device over me, over my chest. Also, I'm going to say its hand over my chest. Mm-hmm. And I was done with pneumonia fairly quickly after the incident.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
How often do you think that kind of thing happens where an abductee is taken and the aliens actually cure them of their illness?
I think it might happen more often than what we think. If I'm not mistaken, Travis Walton, it happened to him. Yeah. So, not widely known, but sure, we know it. I think it happens more often than we think, but I really tread carefully, Damien, and I'll tell you why. I'm trying not to subscribe or ascribe to them the human condition.
Right.
To impose on them something on my terms.
Yeah.
So they're little white men, or they're tall doctors, or they're tall blondes, or whatever they are. Beyond that, I'm dealing with something I truly do not have full perspective on. So I try not to subscribe to them all sorts of superpowers, even though I believe they have them. Perhaps technologically advanced, I think they have that too. But beyond that, I'm trying to be careful not to say, well, they felt sad for me. Like they were concerned about my health. Is that why they did that? Or did they have another purpose? I actually don't know.
Well, can I ask you this? You said you no longer you were at a doctor's, and now you don't get pneumonia anymore. Have you noticed that you don't get ill at all anymore, or rarely if you do?
That's a good question. I still do get ill, but that's something that's gone away, interestingly. And also, I would say to you, Terry, that when I finally decided to do something about this around 11 years ago or something, I suddenly got real interested in healing from out of the blue. Not in my being healed, but in my helping others.
Sure.
It just occurred. And I thought, okay, I don't know why this is happening. But I followed it up. I didn't take any training. I'm not trained. But people have told me what I've done in terms of helping a handful of people felt to them like Reiki.
Okay.
And I understand energy as a magician as well. I understand energy. I work with energy. But that was real surprising to me. And then since then, I developed a couple little techniques just for me. I don't push this upon the world. But if a friend is ill, I'll try it, or I'll suggest to them this little ritual they might go through. And a couple of people have had some success with it. So I'm thinking, am I finally learning something about why I'm here, or why is this happening?
Wow.
I think that's another commonality among abductees, is that a lot of them come back as healers, and they had never done that before, but suddenly it appeals to them, and it works out really well for them.
I
don't know if you
know
see.
that. Yeah, please.
I'm sorry. Damien, I don't know if you see this or not. Angel Wings is asking, did he ever think he was a starseed, a reincarnation of that alien race within a human vessel? Did you ever feel like that?
I've been asked recently, and I've done some heavy thinking on, am I hybrid? Am I hybrid? Am I a starseed? How I would answer that is to say, I don't know for sure, but what I commonly tell people, and they can like it or not, is I'm not from here.
Okay.
And I fully subscribe to that belief. It's just I am so pulled to somewhere else. And in my books, I repeatedly talk about some place I call home. And it's not here. It's not physical.
Okay. Are you referring to a spiritual home?
I'm referring to a feeling, I think, Terry. In a few of my experiences, I've had this unbelievably strong experience of pure unconditional love. And it's not part of my lexicon, or at least it had not been. But I've only experienced it with them.
Okay.
And I just, it's the kind of experience where I'd have to say you drop down on your knees thinking, I can't bear the emotions I'm feeling right now.
Interesting.
And so home to me is affiliated with them. Whether it's a physical place, I don't know, but it's a feeling. And it's totally overwhelming when I get it.
Let's talk about your books for a moment.
Sure.
Again, viewers, please go check out his website. You can find his books there. He also does consultation and he does workshops for experiencers. But the one book I really want to talk about is where you explore the question, why me? And I think that is something that every abductee asks themselves, why me?
Of course.
And you wrote this book with Leslie Mitchell Clark, and we've had her on the show, and she is just a wonderful woman. But what conclusions did you come to about why me?
Oh gosh, this is such a heavy question, but honestly, Damien, I implore yourself or everyone listening or watching this show to go down this road, to ask the question.
Okay.
Leslie and I, when we had the Alien Cosmic Expo up here, it hasn't run for a couple of years, but we'd be involved in some way in hosting it, or we did an experiencers workshop at the last one. And we, to see growing people break down and cry because they think they can tell their story, it's stunning. It was stunning to me. It was very moving. So that answers one of the questions about why me. I'm supposed to be doing this. Can I reach a large audience? I don't think so. I don't have misconceptions about that, but I don't need to. I've always felt I only need to reach one person, whoever that person might be at the time. So to explore the why me question, first it drove me batty because I thought it was flat out interference. I subscribe to the belief that we script, or we write our own scripts for our destiny and our fates, that we largely do that. And then I'm confronted with, okay, so Wes, you think you write your own script, but we're going to interfere with your life like 50 times. Is that okay? It's like, no,
right.
Not okay.
No consent. Do not consent.
This is not authorized by me. So I really experienced everything from anger to despair, thinking. Apparently, other beings can just walk in when they wish, and put me through interesting experiences. Not all horrific, but interesting. So what makes me, different? And I'm not sure I am.
Before you continue, I just want to say what you just said is a very interesting and important point, which is that feeling you felt where like I like to think of it as like the feeling of a rabbit in the woods. When a rabbit wakes up in the woods, he doesn't know if that day he's going to be eaten whole. He doesn't know, and he's constantly in fear because anything, he's so vulnerable. Now humans are happy because humans are like, I am not the rabbit in the woods. I am the wolf in the woods. There's very little that can interfere with my destiny, unlike the rabbits. But I think if, what we're starting to see, me personally, I'm starting to believe there are other beings out there. There are the wolves, and I am the rabbits, and I have to be comfortable with that. And so that's really deep. That's something we all have to come to realize. It's a humbling thing, but it's also, I think, a problem for disclosure, because imagine, most of the world having that feeling at the same time. That would be not good.
I take your point, and I agree with you. I thought that what I did with my fate and destiny was inviolate. That's my issue only. And to find that out was real irritating, that might not be fully true. Maybe largely, but not fully true.
Absolutely.
So first, I'd say confront it, which I did, accept it. I kept pushing it back. I'm not an abductee. I'm not an experiencer. Other people are. This is not me. I'll find another reason for this stuff. And I didn't find another reason for it. So that's all that was left. There's Conan Doyle again, right? That's all that was left after a while. So I got through my anger, started to see a hypnotherapist, started to explore why me. And Leslie has some interesting thoughts about that. She thinks, for instance, if you're the slightest bit psychic, if you have any psi abilities, which I have always had, that attracts them. So that's one of the things that she and I have established when I've been in session with her. She feels that that's like having a searchlight on top of your head.
Interesting.
Saying, come get me, even if you don't want them to. So that's a potential explanation for it.
Would that also mean that if, let's say, you don't have psi abilities, but you develop them, would they be attracted to you once you develop them?
My speculation says yes.
Okay.
And I would say wild trees as well, that once you develop them, they go off the scale. And This happened to me.
Okay.
They just deepen, they just increase. The magnetic pull to continue to experiment with them has never left me. It's something I'm doing every week at least, with groups of people, with myself. I'm always pushing the envelope, pushing the limit. So another answer could be found, and I don't know if y'all or your viewers know about interlife hypnosis.
I'm not familiar. What is that?
So I'm happy to bring it up. I'm no expert. I've been on the receiving end of it. In interlife hypnosis, you're regressed and then brought forward. This is really simplifying it. You're brought forward to the point of your life between lives.
Okay.
Before you come back. I'm taking for granted that we're talking reincarnation, among other things. But you're taken to a point where you basically sit or stand with a council, and your next life is discussed to a certain extent, and your buy-in to what you're supposed to do is discussed and agreed to, and then you go forth and jump into a family that's appropriate, that allows you to do it. That gives you the room somehow to do this, right? And so one of the things that happened to me in my inner life experience is part of the why me question was answered, because I was supposed to do this. But here's the rub, right? If you don't remember in this lifetime, then you didn't do it. You things didn't go according to plan. You did not awaken. You did not come to terms with it.
Right.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, that does.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
How do you feel about the idea that abductees are? It's a generational thing.
I feel strongly about it. I honestly have yet to meet anyone where it hasn't run back and forth in time with them and in family members. That could be true with my own family. I can't 100% say for sure. I can say I come from a spiritual family. But at one time, one of my nieces mentioned something to me, and I thought, that's interesting. I won't go into detail about it, but it just triggered me, and I thought, that's real interesting. I think perhaps none of us are untouched. But you know how we're sometimes presented with the opportunity to say, I believe or I don't? And we don't. We turn around and walk the other way.
Right. Interesting. I have a question. I want to see what your opinion is. So for it seems like for all of human history that I know of, let's just say UFOs and the paranormal, they've always been on the fringe. Perhaps I'm wrong. Perhaps there was a time in the past, but let's say in the last 80 years, paranormal has always been in the fringe, especially UFOs. Okay. Now, question is what would happen? This is a theoretical thing. If the majority of the planet, if it was flipped. So we come to a point in the future, let's say a government discloses UFOs. We come to a point in the future where now the majority of the planet does believe in UFOs and they know the truth, okay? I think that would be good for humanity. Humans would act differently. But my question is, would the phenomenon act differently? Would UFOs act differently? Because right now, like I said, they're very secretive. They're hiding. They don't want to be photographed. So I'm just wondering, would they change at all? How would that factor in? If the majority of the human population totally accepted it, knew the truth, how would that affect their behavior?
That's another great question. I don't think it would quite turn into to serve man.
Okay.
If we think about a Twilight Zone episode. But I do think that they would be more visible. I don't just mean craft. I mean the beings as well. More visible to more people. I think they're playing our game. They're playing to our weaknesses and our strengths. I was asked a bit ago, well, why don't they jump in and stop the war in the Ukraine? And it's like, me? How could I even begin to answer that question? But the way I fielded it was to say that I don't think they're going to step in unless things are absolutely dire.
Okay.
And so I personally feel that they're playing our song, that they're playing to us, that what they do is basically to shield us for our benefit. I'm not sure if any of your other guests or even if any of you have heard of UFOs and beings appearing just to one person.
Yeah. Yes.
Just one person. And yet it's in public. So how does that even happen? And I
Right.
think they're playing to us. They're targeting us, sometimes specifically, sometimes en masse.
There's the idea that that every time you see one, it's because it wants to be seen. It was planned for you to see it. It wants you to get something out of it. Yeah, that's very interesting. The other question I was going to ask is, oh my god, I can't remember. Pass. I didn't think about it. Sorry, I forgot it.
Yeah, I got a question for you though.
Sure.
Do you have any marks on your body? And the reason I'm asking this is because although I can only remember the one experience that I had, I am slowly starting to understand that I've been having experiences since I was a child.
Mm-hmm.
And about a week ago or so, I woke up with these 3 dots right below my calf.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't hurt. They're flat against my skin. They're not bug bites. They don't itch. But they just appeared. And they're still there and just as prevalent. And that has never happened to me before. So it makes me wonder if I'm continuing to have experiences with these things, but I just don't remember them.
I don't want to panic you or anyone, but I'd say you're continuing, without a doubt. This seems to be what they do. I have a friend who wakes up with dots and bruises regularly.
Tina's asking if it was in a triangle pattern, and yes, Tina, it is.
Yes.
Yeah, thank you for clarifying that. Triangle's a big thing with them, whether it's dots or otherwise. I currently don't have any marks, but I've woken up a couple of times with triangles. Unlike a lot of people, I didn't have them on my hand. This is where they appear for a lot of people. I had them on my chest. And it just so happened I got up and looked in the bathroom mirror, and there's 2 intertwined triangles as if they'd been burned into my skin. And they went away, but they were hot to the touch.
Were they?
Yeah, so I grabbed a photo of them. I don't have it available right now, but I grabbed a photo of them and thought, well, that's curious. But the dots, very prevalent to my understanding, very prevalent. Again, I can't tell. Have you been under hypnosis yet, Damien?
No.
Would you consider it?
Perhaps. But there are very few hypnotherapists that I really trust. One of which is Leslie Mitchell Clark. But they're all too expensive. Terry Lovelace just became a hypnotherapist, and we had him on the show, and his story is extremely similar to mine. But yeah, so I thought about reaching out to him, and because I know him personally, maybe he'll give me a discount or something. But but yeah, I would consider it most definitely.
Quite honestly, and I'm trying to be somewhat rigorous about it, I go get checked out by a doctor, just to see what allopathic medicine says about it, if anything. I'm not sure that they would, but it might be worth your while. Leslie and I at one point really wanted to go to town and experiment. We wanted to have blood samples, and I agreed to it taken before and after hypnosis. We weren't able to get a doctor on board to do it, but we did do blood pressure, and my blood pressure was wild. It was not normal. In fact, went down after the session. We also noticed, and I don't know if there's anything any of you have experienced. She has a little treatment space, a great little treatment space, and that room has gotten so hot that both she and I have been sweating. She as the hypnotherapist, me as the patient.
Interesting.
Physical manifestation. The heat was incredible.
Wow, that's a good observation.
Yeah. So I'm not sure, Damien. I'm not in your shoes, but if it were me with the three little dots at this stage of my life, I would not be worried. I would just be curious.
Well, yeah, I'm not worried about it.
Hmm.
I just thought, wow, that's weird, you know. But so let me ask you, like I said, at your website, you do consultations
Hmm.
and you do workshops.
Hmm.
Um, why do you do what you do?
The workshops is a new thing, will be a new thing, starting the first weekend of July, if I can swing it. And I'll be announcing it on my website. I want to, well, two things, I guess. I want to tell people about my story, but that's not the only reason. The overriding reason is to help others. I want to say to others, if you're on that precipice that I was on, and you're wondering whether to hide or run away or cower in fear, that I think you can safely move forward. And I
Mhm.
want to tell people how I did it.
Mhm.
And, part of how I did it was hypnosis. Part of how I did it was meditation. Part of how I did it was talking to experts. Part of how I did it was being involved in the UFO community. Part of how I did it was talking to other abductees and experiencers and trusting one or two people to begin with. And so I want to roll this out for people and say that these are the tools and the resources I used to get through this. Until I finally got to a point where it's like, okay, now I know, now I'm aware, now I'm more or less comfortable. I do not live without fear totally, but I'm pretty good.
Okay.
So I want to encourage people to take the first step. And if it's just latent curiosity, then just come to one of my workshops. I'm having a series of 5. Just come to one. Just come and listen to my story, and you can decide after that. But I've seen people who are wholly hesitant and terrified. And I think moving forward is liberation. At least it has been for me.
Awesome. Very good.
That's great.
That's
That's great.
wonderful.
It's good intentions. I've said this before, but that's pretty much why we started Black Lotus, is because I went through a time period when I remembered this stuff, I just thought I'm crazy, but over time I learned that I wasn't crazy and I wasn't alone. And so we do this show for that very reason, for people who have had experiences like this. And for the same reason, you're not crazy and you're not alone. There are millions and millions of people who have experienced this stuff. And so, yeah. Um, Before we wrap this up, Ralph, do you have any questions?
I want to know what you plan on doing from here on. You said you're starting these workshops and stuff. Are there any other projects you have going?
It's interesting, Ralph, that you asked that, because it just comes out in natural conversation. I'm a lifelong magician as well, not a stage illusionist, but a magician. And that's one of the coping mechanisms I've used. And so when I started to mention that on air, so to speak, there was a huge deal of interest, and I didn't expect it. I'm pretty private about that kind of thing. It's like, these are the philosophies I follow. Maybe it's helped me get through some of this, but I've kept that part to myself. But there seems to be quite a bit of interest. And so perhaps in the fall, I'll just be talking about, I'm going to call it wish magic 101, how a person would get started in this. But in truth, we're already started. We all do magic day to day. It just might not be formalized or organized.
Right.
Interesting.
Very good. It kind of reminds me of, or it's similar to Dean Radin's work. Are you familiar with Dean
Yes, I'm
Radin?
familiar with Dean.
Yeah. His latest book, what is his last book called? I keep starting it, but I never finish it. Real Magic, I believe.
Yeah, my partner would know. She's actually been in correspondence with him.
Okay.
Because she's also a magician, so we're both interested in magic. And he would love to, my understanding is, quantify it.
Yeah.
Quantify it, qualify it. And it's doable. I come up from a background of parapsychology. All this is doable as far as I'm concerned.
Well, I'm really interested in your class because that's an aspect of the phenomenon that I would like. That interests in me. Real life magic, basically, and starting off with little things, like making little things happen, manipulating the outcome of your life.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I am very interested in your class. I'll look into that for sure in the fall.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And what we attract is what we attract. Basically, if I think I'm going to be successful, I will be. But that's just the tiniest point of it, right? This is law of attraction stuff. Among other things. So I tend to look at all of that and say, what's the toolkit for magic? Well, I took some remote viewing training last year. I took 2 separate courses, and that was pretty cool. It's protocol. All of us can do it successfully.
Sure, of course.
Yeah.
Interesting. I had another question. Was okay, when you're not interacting with these extraterrestrials as you believe they are, where are they? Where do they hang out? You know, and I know there's a physical aspect and a non-physical aspect. So is it different? Where does the matter go? Where do the atoms go? But then also, where does consciousness go? You know,
That question could lead us into such a great discussion. My partner and I talk about this all the time. We're living in a holographic universe.
okay.
So what does that make us? Right?
Right.
But I think other beings can manipulate this hologram better than we can.
Okay.
And I put that question to one of the aliens that's been in my life, my whole life, all through my life, this twin I talk about.
Yep.
And she basically said to me, and it's in my the transcripts of the hypnosis, she said, I never leave.
Right.
Oh.
Gotcha.
I'm always there. And then she sort of put the pressure on me. It's your problem. That's my problem. I can't tell when she's around. It's like, okay, challenge accepted.
Do you think that has something to do with when you were younger and you felt like you were always being watched? Do you think it was her?
You know, Terry, it could have been because when I had my first hypnosis session, it was only to unravel the 1980s thing. That did not happen. The first couple of sessions talked about incidents in my childhood I was fully unaware of. You know, I thought my first encounter with alien beings might have been in my teens, but was probably in the 1980s. And this completely turned my world around. But she was one of the first ones to show up in one of the first sessions when I was a little boy, you know, maybe 5 or 6. And she was supposed to be a little girl, not quite looking like a little girl, but that's what she was supposed to be. So I guess my answer is yes.
Yeah. The reason why I bring this up is I don't know that I've ever been taken, but I have a strong feeling that I have no memories of any of it. But ever since I can recall as a young child, and even still today, I always feel like there is somebody in the room with me. I've always felt like I was being watched. And I used to put it on to, and it could be this as well, as is family members that have passed that are with me.
Right.
But as a child, I didn't have anybody who passed that I know that would be with me. But looking back, I'm thinking, well, who knows? But I've woken up like Damien with marks on my body. I had it looked like somebody gave me a shot in my arm.
Wow.
But it was weird. It wasn't bruised, but it looked like a shot. And I can't recall now. I had some kind of mark on this part of my arm. I don't remember now what it looked like. But I have always felt like somebody has been with me. And so it's just, I don't know. I don't know if I've ever been taken or not, but I see all the signs that it could be. And that's why I asked.
Well, my friend who wakes up with the marks on her, she's pretty convinced they're taking something out or putting something in, quite honestly. I don't know if that's true, but that's her belief. And I think it's as good as any. But right. I used to write off this being watched thing. I used to think, well, it's my guides. And like you, Terry, it's deceased members of my family. We've had a lot of family members die. So it's deceased members of my family. It's my guides. I've never gone down the road of angels or demons. Never thought that. But then I started to think, it's not just my guides. Evidently, it's others. And my guides, if I ever try to address them, which I've done my whole lifetime, just have a different vibe.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they just there's
Yeah.
when I speak to my guides, there's just I'm in a whole different zone with them than I am with these other beings. So I know it's not always my guides.
Okay.
Interesting.
That is interesting. Because I mean, there's times that I know which family member's with me. I can usually
Mhm.
tell which family member's with me. But then most of the time, and I have to say the majority of the time, it's not somebody I know or somebody
Wow.
I realize. So that's what makes me think it might be more along the lines of an extraterrestrial or some other
Interesting.
being. Yeah.
Could it be an ancestor that's like that you never met? You know, maybe like 100
Mhm.
years ago.
Well, and that's what my earlier thought was, if that's what it was. If it is family, it's family I hadn't met that had passed before I was born even. But that's what I'm saying. So I don't know. But it is a feeling of a stranger. So I
Okay.
don't know how to put that.
I understand that now. Yeah.
Yeah. Just
I
I'm just
don't know
being watched.
if you're all familiar with Robert Monroe's work.
I've
I'm
heard
not-
of him so much, and people talk to me about him, but his voyages outside of the body book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I know that we go off topic too far, but his one of his proteges, a guy named Bruce, used to say he finally got comfortable with the fact that he was never not watched, never
Wow.
alone.
Interesting.
He finally came to terms with that he was watched everywhere in anything he did. And I thought about that and thought, maybe so. If that's the case, they must be entertained at times, horrified at other times. I
Yes.
don't know.
yeah.
Yeah, I know. It's just, yeah. Mhm.
So I think we are going to wrap it up for the evening. Wes, thank you so much for being here.
Yes.
Wes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Viewers, I just want to mention again that starting this Thursday, we are going to begin the show at 9 p.m. Eastern and what would that be?
6 p.m.
6 p.m. Pacific. Yeah. And that'll be an ongoing thing. And so we will be coming on directly after Goof On. And so, yeah. And don't forget to hit like and subscribe and share this video around with people that you know that are into these topics, you know, and leave a comment below. I'd also like to say, well, first of all, thank you very much for watching. Yeah, until next time, keep thinking and question everything.